Alright, it's November 1st. I took a week-long break to review some horror movies for the last full week of October last week. Take a drink every time I say week. Now let's finish off the Batman movies with probably the worst era of Batman movies. Well, maybe the goofiest. We'll just say that. Batman Forever came out in 1995 and marks the first Batman movie directed by Joel Schumacher. It stars Val Kilmer, Tommy Lee Jones, Jim Carrey, Nicole Kidman, and Chris O'Donnell. The movie focuses on TwoFace and the Riddler as they try to take over Gotham, and Batman once again has to stop them. At the same time, Bruce Wayne takes in this young boy, he's a grown-ass man, whose parents were killed by Two-Face at a circus, and this brings back a bunch of flashbacks to how he pretty much had the same backstory that this man named Dick Grayson had that led Bruce Wayne to be Batman. Now, when you look at these four Batman movies, and then you look at the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, you can easily draw comparisons to both franchises, specifically when you get to the first and fourth film. And even though I love Tim Burton's Batman more than Richard Donner's Superman, or even Superman 2, I actually do prefer the Superman series as a whole to the Batman series. One reason is that I just feel like Batman's too overexposed for me, but another reason is consistency. No matter how bad Superman 3 got, and no matter how laughably shitty Superman 4 The Quest for Peace is, they all had the same guy playing Superman, Christopher Reeve. This time around, there's no Michael Keaton as Batman anymore, and there's even no Tim Burton as director this time around, because Batman Returns was not the big movie that Warner Brothers had hoped for. It was just too dark, so they opt out to go more lighthearted, and thus we have Joel Schumacher, and in the role of Batman, we have Val Kilmer, who is probably the Batman actor nobody talks about that often. People love Adam West, Michael Keaton, and Christian Bale. People talk about Ben Affleck because he's the current Batman, and people talk about George Clooney's Batman for all the wrong reasons. But Val Kilmer doesn't really get that much attention, which is actually a shame because I think he works as Bruce Wayne and Batman. To me, Val Kilmer just has more of that Bruce Wayne look. He has a good personality, he has a very suave appearance when he has to be in public, and even manages to be good at the detective work, even if it does come across as a little too Adam West-ish. That's not a word, but you kind of get the point. Now, as Batman, he does have a good look and a good voice to fit, but ultimately it's just thrown off thanks to some really stupid one-liners, like, "I'll get drive-through," or "It's the car, right? Chicks love the car." And I know with these particular movies, people love to talk about the bat nipples and the badass, but ultimately that's not worth pointing out, not until the next movie. But ultimately, I think Val Kilmer is a great Bruce Wayne. And I love how this is the only other movie in this series to give Bruce Wayne character development. We get a little more into his backstory of how he became Batman, and it all comes back to him after Dick Grayson's parents are killed, and he kind of takes him in. And you do buy the scenes where he's trying to keep Dick Grayson from going down the path to be a vigilante like Batman. It works well. If there's one shining spot in this whole movie, it's Val Kilmer, who is automatically better than he was in The Snowman. But you know what? Shit's better than The Snowman, And I just needed an excuse to shit on The Snowman. Let's move on. Val Kilmer is the best part of this movie. If there was another thing that I actually do kind of enjoy, it is the new look for Gotham. Sure, it lacks the dark and gothic look that the Tim Burton movies had, but in its own way, this look of Gotham still makes the city a character in itself, even if it is very CG heavy and very neon. Everything else in this movie is just very mediocre or just downright bad, particularly with the villains. I mentioned that Batman Returns started planting the seeds of the problems that the Schumacher movies would have, and it's very obvious with the Two-Face and the Riddler. Let's first talk about Two-Face, played by Tommy Lee Jones, who they screwed up bad in this movie. It's worse than the Penguin was in Batman Returns. Basically, Tommy Lee Jones' performance in this movie is reduced to laughing a lot, having a split personality, right down to each personality holding 2 cocktail glasses and just drinking them, and each personality has their own girlfriend, one of them played by Drew Barrymore. But you don't really feel any sympathy towards this villain at all, because it's just totally goofy, over the top. And it's also worth noting that Billy D. Williams played Harvey Dent in Tim Burton's Batman, which thank God that he didn't get called back to do this movie, because this would have just been an embarrassing role for Billy D. Williams, a role that he would eventually finally get to play in Lego Batman this year, which is kind of clever. But Tommy Lee Jones is just too much. It feels like they're trying to replicate the Joker because his origin involves acid and he just acts so loony and over the top. But even then, Jack Nicholson's Joker was kind of subtle with his looniness. Also, the makeup job is just awful. It's just way too cartoonish. It's over the top. I don't know how else to describe the makeup job. It should have just been a burnt face. It could be a little exaggerated, but at least give us the impression that it's a burnt face rather than whatever the hell that is. Oh well, let's talk about the other villain, which is the main villain of the film, Edward Nygma, the Riddler, played by Jim Carrey. At first glance, you think, oh, Jim Carrey is the Riddler? This could possibly work. And there are a few points where you can see the potential for a good Riddler played by Jim Carrey, but ultimately, it's just Jim Carrey playing Jim Carrey. When you watch Jack Nicholson as the Joker, sure, it's Jack Nicholson being Jack Nicholson, but he also manages to embody the Joker just with his mannerisms, his evil plans. He makes for a fantastic Joker. Jim Carrey, on the other hand, acts the exact same way he acts in all of his movies, and it never once gives you the impression of, oh, that's the Riddler. No, that's Jim Carrey from Ace Ventura. That's Jim Carrey from The Mask. That's Jim Carrey from Dumb and Dumber. It's just Jim Carrey. Also, the origin story for the Riddler is a very tired plot thread that we would see in other superhero movies, like The Incredibles, Iron Man 3, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where the only reason the supervillain becomes the supervillain that they are is because they got rejected by the hero. Now, in The Incredibles, it's a little goofy, but you can understand the reasoning why Mr. Incredible does it, because he has this attitude of I work alone, and Syndrome, being the villain later on, works with Mr. Incredible's midlife crisis. In Iron Man 3, Aldrich Killian gets rejected by Tony Stark to join up with AIM, but later on in the movie, when we get to the actual meat of Iron Man 3, we see that Aldrich Killian, even though he's now a villain, he's actually done very well for himself without Tony Stark's help. Then with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Jamie Foxx's Electro is just a spider stalker. It was just so creepy and inorganic. The Riddler in Batman Forever falls between Iron Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where he works at Wayne Enterprises and comes up with this idea to basically read everyone's minds throughout the entire city, but Bruce Wayne rejects it. Smart choice, because that's already a supervillain plot to begin with. And the way Jim Carrey acts in this first scene is just really weird. He's just super over-obsessive. He's just a little wacky, though not as wacky as he would eventually be with the suit on. And he's got long orange hair. He's got a lab coat. There's just something really unsettlingly familiar with his performance. Oh my God. Snyder! Okay, the Nostalgia Critic joked about Batman vs. Superman's Doomsday having the exact same origin story as Nuclear Man from Superman 4, but there is no way in hell that anyone making Batman vs. Superman looked at Jesse Eisenberg's performance as Lex Luthor and just the overall way he looks and go, oh shit, he looks exactly like Jim Carrey in Batman Forever. Abort! Abort! We can't rip off two crappy Batman and Superman movies at the same time. We can't. Abort! Abort! Oh, okay. I need a minute. I need a minute to process all this. I'll be right back. Okay, got that out of my system. Let's move on with a slightly better Batman movie, this one. Let's talk about somebody who's absolutely wasted in this movie, which is Nicole Kidman. Nicole Kidman plays this love interest for Batman and Bruce Wayne, but the only thing that you can really grasp from her character is that she is horny for Batman. The first time she sees Batman, she is completely aroused, and then she even activates the bat signal by herself just to call Batman, just to rub his chest, and just say, ooh, black rubber. Which, by the way, that never works unless you're inside Comic-Con. Even then, I'm wondering if that actually does work at all. This is just a very degrading role for Nicole Kidman because she serves no real purpose to the plot. And because she is such a hard-on for both Batman and eventually Bruce Wayne, the only thing that's really missing is for her to just get in front of one or the other personality, strip naked, and say, fuck me. I know that sounds incredibly harsh, and I do apologize for that statement, but you can't watch Batman Forever and with a straight face say, no, this woman's not horny at all. You can't. That's the only character trait you're going to get from her in this movie is horniness, and Nicole Kidman is just so wasted. This is an Oscar-winning actress who's wasted here. Now, one thing I'd like to point out, and depending on your point of view, you're going to take this as a negative or positive. This movie feels very much like a big-budget version of the Adam West TV show, right down to where even Robin goes, "Holy rusting metals, Batman," and says it the exact same way Burt Ward would say, "Holy blank 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 Batman." It does have some very entertaining bits to it, especially when you get to the big finale. I mean, the big finale plays out exactly like an Adam West TV show. But ultimately, there's just not much to care about in this movie. Batman Forever is not good, but it's also not terrible. The best parts in this movie, as I mentioned before, are Val Kilmer and his little bits of character development when dealing with Dick Grayson. But Two-Face is just screwed up royally, Jim Carrey is just Jim Carrey, Nicole Kidman is a total waste, and this is rather an insulting role for her. And I haven't mentioned Robin that much. That's because Chris O'Donnell just didn't leave that much of an impression on me. Sure, he looked really good in the costume at the end of the movie, and there are points where you do sympathize with him. I like how he's a little more mature this time around and just not a kid, but I can't really say he left an impact on me, except for that stupid little earring on his ear. So my rating is watch at your own risk. As I said before, if you look at this movie as a big budget version of the Adam West TV show, then you can enjoy it. It does have some unintentionally goofy moments. But if you're really hardcore about your Batman and you're just disappointed that a series that started off on a very serious and dark note with the first two movies just turned into this, then you're going to be disappointed. And that's my review for Batman Forever. Next week's the big one. Next week, we finish things off. We finish the entire Superman-Batman marathon of reviews with Batman and Robin. I wish I had an extra week to process this. I wish I did. But we're here. We're at ground zero. Let's get this done. Until next week, I hope you enjoyed this review. Leave a comment down below and tell me what your thoughts are on Batman Forever, if and when you've seen it. And as always, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.